this is Frode, and welcome to ActualizeNotes TV, where I deliver 5 big ideas that we can use to actualize our potential, and I give you some tips on how you can apply the ideas. Today we have another great book, Turning Pro by Steven Pressfield. Turning Pro, subtitle, Tap Your Inner Power and Create Your Life's Work. It's the third book I'm covering by Steven Pressfield, and as you may know, Turning Pro is part of a trilogy that Steven has written that will help us conquer resistance, the resistance we inevitably feel when we sit down to do our work. And among Turning Pro are The World of Art and Do the Work. And I just love Steven's mojo on the subject of resistance. It has been really helpful for me in doing my own work. In The World of Art, Steven writes that he can divide his life into 2 parts. Before turning pro and after. And it says that after turning pro was way better. If you want to learn how to conquer resistance, if you want to learn how to take your mindset from that of an amateur to a professional, and if you want to do your life's work, Turning Pro is a wise choice. 5 ideas. Let's get started with the first one, which is addictions. Steven says that addictions are not bad. They are simply shadow forms of a more noble and exalted calling. And Grant Cardone echoes the same wisdom in Be Obsessed or Be Average, where it says that your obsession means you have the juice to do great things. And what all of this really means is that if you have an obsession, whether it's a drinking problem, or playing too much video games, watching too much television, or overeating, well, that means that you have the capacity to do something great if you're able to channel that energy into something positive and constructive. For example, I have had several addictions in my own life. About 4 years ago, I would sit playing video games for hours and hours. I would sit until about 4 a.m. in the morning after I had started playing the previous evening. And I've also had some addictions with overeating for a period of my life and watching way too many television shows. So we all have these addictions and they're different for everyone. But if you have one, it will be really simple for me to blow on my flamethrower and turn it on myself before. But now I have turned it away and discarded it, the flamethrower, because I've learned how to channel that energy from a negative addiction to a positive addiction. And more on that in the 5th big idea, how you can turn a negative addiction into a positive one. So addictions are not bad. They are shadow forms of a more noble calling. Turning pro. Steven says that turning pro is really simple, but simultaneously very difficult for many people. Because when you turn pro, you finally listen to that still voice in your head that nudges you and tells you what you really want to do with your life. It's when you stop caring about the opinions and judgments of other people. It's when you stop caring about the self-doubt and judgments of yourself. And it's when you finally go out and do what you're most afraid to do, but you know in your heart is necessary. And this reminds me of something Russ Harris talks about in The Confidence Gap. He talks about the root of the word courage. I'll write it down. The root of the word courage is core. And core means heart. So, thus, Russ says, courage means we do what's in our hearts. In other words, we act on our values. And when people act courageously, what's the most common emotion that they feel? Fear. So courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing what really matters despite our fears. It's turning pro and acting courageously. So what does your voice tell you right now that you really have to do? What is this calling that you feel? And are you afraid to do it? Well, maybe that might be what you really have to do in order to turn pro. Third big idea, pro days versus amateur days. Steven says that when we turn pro, everything becomes simple. And he says that because when we turn pro, we start ordering all of our activities in order to accomplish an object. We do it to overcome the resistance and fears that have stopped us in the past. For example, we structure it so we can write a book, we can write a symphony, we can start a new training program, or we can get into an elite school, or whatever. Another thing that changes is we start structuring our days so we get better sleep, so we can have more energy. And another thing, we also start reading books that can help us get better at doing our work. But the amateur days, they are governed by the drama of our everyday life. For example, oh my god, it rains again. Or distractions. Ooh, another text message. Oh, another snap. Oh, an email. Well, let me just check out all of them simultaneously and blow up my attention instead of focusing on my work, what I really need to do. But all of that goes away when we turn pro. We are different, and it shows. And Steven has a great phrase to describe the difference between pros and amateurs. The difference between an amateur and a professional is in their habits. The amateur has amateur habits. The professional has professional habits. So where are you on this continuum between amateur days and pro days? And how can you get closer to the pro days? Fourth big idea. This is a really great idea. The Yetzer Hara. Steven mentions a conversation he has with Rabbi Mordecai Finley of the Or HaTorah congregation in Los Angeles. And he asks Rabbi whether there is a parallel to resistance in Kabbalistic studies. And Rabbi says that yes, Steven, there is. It's what we call Yetzer Hara. And what we call Yetzer Hara, Steven, is what you call resistance. And the Yetzer Hara is a second self inside of you. This second self doesn't care about you. Its only purpose is to prevent you from doing your work and actualize your potential, just like resistance. So we have this negative force inside of us, this second self, the Yetzer Hara, resistance. But what's fascinating is that we also have a positive force inside of us, which Rabbi calls our soul, and it's called neshama in Hebrew. So I have a negative force, resistance, and a positive force, soul. And Steven asks how the ancient Kabbalists tried to ally with the positive forces and defeat the negative. And Rabbi says that that is an ethical code called mussar. They used to do that, which is the fifth big idea. Mussar is a disciplined, humble, and open application of the mind and will. It consists of 2 steps. First step is to identify the sin, aka identify your addiction. The second step is to eliminate it. So, what all of this, to make it really simple, what all of this mythology is really about is overcoming our negative addictions so we can turn them into positive ones. And we do that by a simple exercise. Please finish these 2 sentences for me. We'll go through identify the sin and eliminate it. The addiction that I know has been taking away a lot of my time and energy is... Please finish for me. Then, the new activities I'm going to engage in with all that new time and energy is... Got it? Well, for me this is The addiction I know has been taking away a lot of my time and energy is television shows and movies. And the new activities I'm going to engage in with all that time and energy is reading and walking. To finish this one off, I want to tell you what Steven says is the sole reason behind why we should go through all this struggle and make all these sacrifices and conquer resistance. It's for the audience, those people who will benefit from us doing our work. So therefore, I ask of you to give your greatest gifts and greatest service to the world. Well, that was mussar, 2 steps. And by the way, what he calls mussar is what Steven calls turning pro. Just so we have that all right. Mussar, 2 steps, identify your addictions and then eliminate them. Yetzer is the resistance that tries to prevent us from doing our work. And actualize our potential, of course. Pro days versus amateur days. The difference between the professional and amateur is in their habits. Turning pro, everything becomes simple, and when we turn pro, we finally listen to that voice in our heads that tells us what we have to do, and we do what's in our hearts. Addictions, they're not bad if you're able to redirect them into something positive and constructive. That was a quick look at turning pro. Thank you, Steven Pressfield. So what is the one idea that jumped out at you? And how can you apply it to your life starting right now? Well, I hope you enjoyed and that you continue to actualize your potential so we can create a better world together. Thanks for watching. Have another awesome day. See ya.